60-year-old widow's heart-melting journey of love with mail-order husband exposes shocking truths. Martha sat alone at her kitchen table, the sun casting a pale light over the empty seat across from her. It had been a year since Edward passed, and the shadows in her home felt heavier than the fall chill creeping in through the window cracks. No longer did laughter fill the rooms, only the echoes of memories clung to the walls. Bills piled up like autumn leaves outside, reminding her of the life she once knew and the uncertain future ahead. She remembered Edward's skeptical smirk at the thought of a mail-order husband. He had once joked that it was a sign of desperation, but now desperate was exactly how Martha felt. The loneliness burrowed inside her, squeezing her heart, and she thought that perhaps taking a leap of faith was the only way to stave it off. With trembling hands, she completed the online registration, her profile an unfiltered confession of her grieving heart and yearning soul. As she clicked submit, a rush of nerves surged through her. What had she done? The thought of being scrutinized by her children, by the neighbors, made her breath quicken. They wouldn't understand. A part of her didn't understand. Yet what did she have left to lose? Days turned to weeks, and then Marco's profile caught her eye, a man exuding warmth and charm despite the miles between them. Her pulse quickened with each email exchanged. They talked about dreams, regrets, and hopes. Each word from him unknotted the tension coiling in her stomach, breathing life back into her otherwise monochrome days. At last they decided to meet in person. The thought of it made her dizzy with anticipation and dread. Before their meeting, tension surged within her. "What will the neighbors say?" and "Mom, are you really doing this?" echoed her children's words, ringing like church bells in her mind. She clenched her hands, fighting against the flood of doubt threatening to drown her. What if he was just another illusion? Would she be brave enough to confront the reality of her choices? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. When they finally met, the chemistry ignited instantly, like sparks jumping from a fire. Martha laughed, felt alive. Every moment with Marco pulled her closer to the person she had long since buried. But as their connection deepened, the whispers of her children loomed larger. Recognizing the burgeoning love within her raised more questions than answers. Could she be truly happy, and what lay hidden beneath Marco's smile? Martha's resolve wavered. She rummaged through the attic one evening, searching for distraction, when her hands brushed against an old set of paintbrushes and faded canvases. Memories flooded her mind, her passionate nights lost in art before life became routine. She hesitated, standing between the reality of her passions and the storms brewing in her heart. Just as she picked up the brushes, a message from Marco lit up her phone. Something stirred in him that he had yet to reveal. Fingers trembling, she felt the weight of anticipation and anxiety clutching her stomach. Doubt and fear surged as she confronted the hidden truths in her life and in Marco's. What if the love she felt threatened to shatter like fragile paint on an unfinished canvas, exposing the raw underlayer of her heart? The question pulsed in her mind, demanding an answer. Could she trust him? The painting of her life was splashed with uncertainty, and in that moment she knew she was standing at a precipice, the ground shifting beneath her feet. Would she leap into the unknown or retreat to the safety of her solitude? The path ahead remained shrouded in fog, and Martha had never felt more alive or more terrified.
Martha felt the paintbrush shift in her grip, a pathway to a world that once belonged to her, now overshadowed by the complexities of newfound affection and dread. The attic was dim, filled with shadows as thick as the uncertainty clouding her mind. Memories of vibrant colors dancing under her brush flickered through her thoughts as if coaxing her to return to her passion. The art was alive, after all, even if she was not. As the weight of Marco's last message lingered, a gentle tug of curiosity intertwined with fear. What secret needed unearthing? The longer she avoided it, the louder her anxieties throbbed against her temples. Tightening her grip on the brush, Martha dipped it into the paint, the vibrant color swirling onto the canvas, splattering her frustrations and hopes alike. She could lose herself in creation, but how could she embrace two worlds, the one of art and the one of emerging love, with such conflicting demands pulling her in different directions? Parallel to the strokes on the canvas was the realm of her heart, desiring to bridge the chasm between solitude and companionship. That night she painted long into the darkness, confronting the muddled feelings inside her. With each stroke, clarity emerged, as the image of warmth and connection transformed from abstract to reality. The brush became her confidant. She could articulate emotions that words failed to express. The following days cemented her resolve. Personal development wasn't just about stepping into the unknown with Marco, it involved reclaiming the self she feared she had lost.
After years spent prioritizing others, this was her opportunity to nurture her own spirit. Channeling this realization, she began to awaken the artist within, a woman infused with color, untamed aspiration, and the ability to shape her narrative once more. Martha made a plan. She would organize an art show in the local community center, a showcase of her work that focused on themes of resilience, rebirth, and the nuances of love. Art had always been a vessel for her thoughts. The blank canvases had transitioned from mere surfaces into profound storytelling. Fueled by her burgeoning connection with Marco, she began gathering pieces that illustrated her experiences, integrating emotion into physicality and daring to confront the world. Each evening, under the fading twilight, she breathed life into her canvases, while also integrating sketches inspired by Marco. During their conversations, his laughter, along with tales of travel and dreams, replicated the vivacious colors on her palette, the warm oranges, soft pinks, and deep blues that mirrored her flickering heart. However, the worries festered as she approached the event. Invitations would bring her community's scrutiny, possibly amplifying the conversations around her choices. Martha often found herself grappling with contrasting feelings. Would they see her as foolish for pursuing love late in life? Or would they appreciate the courage it took to seek happiness once again? As her deadline approached, Martha couldn't shake the unease nibbing at her resolve. A visceral alarm rang within. This endeavor was more than art. It was a declaration of her identity. She felt herself teetering between full authenticity and the instinctual reflex to retreat. On the night of her show, she stood before her collection, her palms slick with nervous anticipation. With Marco in attendance, their presence intertwined syrupy warmth with the visceral fear of judgment. What if they didn't understand? What if her heart walked a delicate line on the verge of fragility? The room buzzed. As guests began to engage with her art, a revelation struck. She wasn't just displaying her work, she was unveiling her spirit, risking vulnerability for the sake of connection. It was then that she understood this journey with Marco was meant to help her confront not only her suppressed desires, but also the fears that had shadowed her lifetime.
But just then her son entered, his expression a blend of concern and disbelief. The room seemed to suck in air, tension freezing the moment. Was this the brink of confrontation she had feared, or the beginning of acceptance? Martha's heart raced. The moment had arrived to confront the gifts of her past, the fears of her present, and the unpredictable future beckoning. Her next step felt monumental, the stakes undeniably high. What would she choose to reveal? And as their eyes locked, she realized nothing would ever be the same again. Martha felt the weight of the room descend as her son's gaze dug into her, searching for the mother he thought he knew. In that moment, the energy shifted. The air thickened with the unspoken question of her choices. The exhilaration of her art faded momentarily, replaced by the rawness of parental expectation. "Mom?" Her son's voice broke through the clamor of the event, a beacon piercing through her self-doubt. The room was filled with familiar faces, some smiling, others skeptical, but all watching. She glanced quickly at Marco. His reassuring presence allowed her to draw a deep breath, steadying the whirlwind within. He had seen every layer of her, and yet remained there, a constant avant-garde companion in a journey she had barely begun. The moment felt pivotal, a crossing of paths where past and future collided. Should she simplify her truth to what felt comfortable for him, or should she embrace the risk of full honesty? With a flicker of resolve ignited, Martha chose the latter. She held her son's gaze with a newfound boldness. "This isn't just an art show, it's a part of me reclaiming who I am," she began, her voice echoing the strength she drew from every brushstroke she'd laid down. "I've spent too many years resting on the sidelines, and finally I'm stepping back into my light." The tension in her heart began to dissolve as the words spilled forth. She spoke of her rediscovery, of Marco, the laughter, the painting, and the authenticity she longed for. Each sentence was like a layer of paint, building a vivid tapestry of her emotions. With every honest confession, the murmurs from the crowd faded, and it was just her and her son. She watched as the confusion in his eyes gave way to an understanding, a slow realization that echoed her own feelings of late. "I deserve happiness too, just like everyone else, even if it may look different from what you expect," she concluded. Could it be? Was there hope for acceptance wrapped within the concern? A subtle flicker in her son's expression, something softer, more yielding, hinted at a path forward. She silently willed him to meet her halfway. Had she done enough to bridge the chasm that had developed between codependence and her own joy? Marco stepped closer, and Martha found comfort in his presence. Perhaps he held the key to her liberation, the blend of risk and passion that could balance the maternal and the romantic, the lost and the found. As her son opened his mouth, ready to speak, the audience shifted again, eyes darted away, blood rushing from faces as the lights flickered ominously. A collective pause hung in the air, swallowing all anticipation. Is this what it feels like to have your existence tested? Her stomach twisted. She braced herself for whatever bombshell awaited. "Mom, The lights flickered once more, the room holding its breath, caught in the grasp of uncertainty. She could feel the tide of change, the epiphany suspended in the air like the sharp intake of breath before a plunge into cold water. Would she meet the challenge of being both artist and mother? The answer hung tantalizingly close, and Martha's resolve lit the way. And just as she prepared herself for his revelation, a shattering crash echoed from outside, a sound that felt like a metaphor for everything Martha was grappling with, the loud dismantling of everything she thought stable in her life. What awaited her steps forward? Would she embrace the chaos, or would she retreat into the shadows where she longed to be seen once more? Martha's heart raced at the sound of the crash, a jarring interruption that echoed her internal tumult. Her breath quickened, each inhalation heavy with uncertainty. The disarray outside mirrored her own tangled thoughts. What awaited her on the other side of that moment? With one last glance at Marco, she steeled herself, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. "Stay here," she whispered to her son, though she sensed the frustration bubbling beneath her protective instincts. He needed to know that she was willing to face challenges head-on, as daunting as they seemed. Sweeping through the crowd, Martha emerged from the warmth and complexity of the gallery into the chaos of the outside world. The evening air was thick with the scent of rain and the sharp tang of something more volatile. As she stepped onto the uneven pavement, she spotted a toppled sculpture, a masterpiece meant to symbolize resilience, and yet here it lay, shattered, pieces strewn about like the fragments of her own identity. In that instant, clarity enveloped her. This was more than a mere accident. It was an invitation to confront her fear. Without hesitation, she knelt down and picked up a shard, its edges glinting dangerously in the fading light. The sharpness reminded her of her emotions, a landscape of wounds that had festered in silence for too long. "What happened?" a voice called out, jolting her back to the present. An artist friend, Janelle, was rushing towards her, concern etched on her face. "Just a moment of chaos," Martha said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Yet she recognized the sincerity in Janelle's gaze, the shared struggles of artists striving for authenticity amidst a world that often demanded conformity. As they began to gather the pieces together, Martha willed herself to take a risk, to be vulnerable. "Janelle, can I be honest?" Her friend paused, turning to meet her earnest gaze. "Always." "I've felt so torn these past few weeks. Some days it's an exhilarating journey into self-discovery, and others it feels like I'm clawing my way out of a deep pit." The admission, raw and unfiltered, hung in the air, an unshackling of the truths she had kept close to her heart. "What do you mean?" Janelle asked, her voice softening, a gentle encouragement.
With the shards of the broken sculpture cradled in her hands, Martha spoke of her son's expectations, her patient, supportive love for Marco, and the artistic rebirth that was as terrifying as it was liberating. Each revelation was a piece of herself laid bare, vulnerable yet invigorating. It was in sharing her truth aloud that she found strength. This journey isn't just about art, it's about reclaiming what it means to be me. But I fear chasing my dreams will hurt those I love, Martha confessed, her voice catching as unshed tears brimmed at the corners of her eyes. Janelle nodded thoughtfully, a knowing reflection glowing in her expression. "Do you think they'd rather have you living half a life, or see you embody your fullest self?" Her words pierced through the veil of doubt that had clouded Martha's heart. A sense of urgency surged within her, a realization that embracing her evolution didn't mean abandoning her son. It could empower them both. "Maybe," she began slowly, "by being my truest self, I can show him that pursuing happiness is what we're all meant to do, even amid chaos." As the two women finished collecting the remnants of the sculpture, Martha felt a resolve building inside her, an acknowledgement that the disarray of life could lead to beauty if she embraced it. When they returned inside, her eyes landed on her son, still standing there uncertainly. This wasn't over. There was still a conversation to be had, a pivotal moment awaiting. She exchanged a glance with Marco, letting him know she was ready to dive deeper into the night's revelations. The time had come to face the unknown together, where every step could forge a new path for them all. As she approached her son, Martha sensed the rising tension, the coiling anticipation. "I want to tell you more about my journey, but first I need you to trust me." And just as her son's expression shifted, a flicker of understanding dawning,
Another shattering sound echoed from the streets, reverberating through the gallery once more. This time it resonated with possibilities, like the tremors before a storm, as both fear and hope swirled around them. What other truths lay ahead, waiting to be uncovered? Martha's heart felt heavier as she approached Marco, the weight of her unspent words filling the air like smoke. The flickering lights from the gallery highlighted the uncertainty etched on his face, a canvas upon which she needed to paint her truth. She didn't want to rush, that would only deepen the chasm between them. Instead, she took a moment to steady her breath, allowing the chaos outside to settle within her before she spoke. "Marco," she began softly, keeping her tone steady, "I know that you're probably feeling confused right now. This isn't just about me anymore, it's about us." I could see his eyes widen, lending her a quiet courage as she unlocked Pandora's box of revelations.
He shifted uncomfortably, his youthful energy fraught with both curiosity and apprehension. "What do you mean, Mom? Are you not going to paint anymore?" The question hung expectantly between them, the unspoken fears swirling in a tight ball within her chest. "No, sweetheart," she responded, shaking her head. "I want to and need to paint, but I want to do it in a way that honors who I really am." Martha felt the pulse of determination ignite within her. "Can we talk about what that means?" Marco asked, his voice a mix of hesitation and intrigue. In that instant, something clicked. Martha realized that this moment was not just about explaining herself to Marco, it was about inviting him to join her on this journey. An opportunity for both of them to grow. "I want to tell you about why I stopped painting and what has held me back," she started, voice steady, the tremors of uncertainty fading. "After your father passed, I lost a lot more than just him. I lost my spark, my consistency, my spirit. I forgot who I was underneath it all." Marco's brows furrowed, and for a moment she worried she had taken this too far, but he remained silent, allowing her the space to voice her heart. "I thought if I focused solely on you, on being the perfect mom, that I could still find happiness. But it turns out I need to make room for my own happiness too." The realization resonated deeply, a truth she and her son could both understand. In her son's eyes she felt the shift, the dawning of understanding that it was okay for her to embrace her dreams and that he would still be supported. "Do you think it would make me less of a mom if I pursued what I love?" she asked searchingly. Marco's expression softened, as if the gentle rhythm of her words had soothed some of his hidden fears. "No, Mom. If it makes you happy, I want you to do it. I just don't want to lose you." Her heart twisted painfully at that admission, reflecting the depth of their connection. "You're not going to lose me. I'm right here. I want us both to thrive," she insisted. "You can chase your dreams too. I'd love to support you in that." A spark ignited in Marco's eyes, a tentative light breaking through a veil of hesitation. Ideas began to surface between them, mingling as they spoke of his music ambitions and her artistic aspirations, both taking shape in the conversation that now flowed more freely. As he opened up, Martha felt herself letting go of years of self-doubt and paralysis. The sculpture's shards on the gallery floor became symbolic, punctuating their dialogue like stepping stones towards a shared future. They could rebuild something transcendent together, something forged from vulnerability and trust. Yet, as the moments coalesced into a newfound acceptance, another sound interrupted, a frantic commotion erupting from the streets once more. This time it felt like a warning, a stirring discomfort, as if deconstructing their freshly laid foundation. "Let's go see," Marco urged, eyes shining with an adventurous spirit. Martha hesitated, the echoes of her uncertainties lingering in her mind. A choice loomed before her. Would she step into the chaos outside, confronting whatever challenges awaited, or retreat to the comfort of what was safe and familiar?
As she looked at her son, nervous yet emboldened, Martha knew the decision would not just test her resolve, it would also shape the next chapter of their lives together. The moment had come to unearth deeper truths, hidden vulnerabilities, and perhaps something even more significant than she had anticipated. "Okay, Marco," she said finally, steeling her resolve once more. "Let's go see what it is." With a shared glance that felt like a promise, they stepped towards the unknown together, the outside world brimming with unarticulated possibilities, and Martha prepared to embrace whatever truths awaited them both. As they neared the front lines of the protest, a young woman among the crowd raised her voice high above the rest, demanding listeners embrace the power of their voices. Martha could feel her heart quicken. This was a pivotal moment, a challenge not only for those fighting for change, but for herself. Could she uncover the same tenacity in her own pursuits? The realization was electrifying. All around her, people were stepping into their truths, raising their voices, pushing back against their fears. It resonated with Martha deeply. If they could confront societal upheaval, she could certainly reignite her own creative passions. This moment illuminated the stark contrast, yet reminded her that personal battles often intertwine. In their turmoil, there existed a powerful thread of unity. "What if we join them, Mom?" Marco suggested, inspired. "What if we use this energy for your art or my music? We can channel all this into something meaningful." The prospect blazed within Martha. The world outside reflected their inner revolutions, teasing at their own potential for transformation. "Yes, but we must shout it in our own way," she replied, her resolve solidifying in a way that felt new yet instinctual. As they stood at the crossroads of action, voices rising around them, Martha felt the richness of possibility enveloping her. No longer just a spectator, she would weave this experience into her art, creating a tapestry of emotion that could sing truth into existence. But would her courage hold against the daunting task of stepping back onto her canvas, back into her life? The palpable charge of this moment hung in the air, begging for resolution, but challenges loomed. The clarity that fueled her with hope also brought a chilling recognition. Her creative rebirth would require confrontation, not just of herself, but of the past that had bound her. "Marco," she said, grounding herself on the precipice of this change, "the time has come to face what holds us back. Will we take that leap together?" His response, bright with possibility, echoed within her. But even as the spark ignited between them, a distant siren blared, cutting through the fervor around them. Martha turned, the faint sound drawing her attention to something lurking beyond the visible chaos, an unfinished chapter waiting to unfold. She could feel the tension knotting in her stomach again, accompanied by the looming questions over what it really took to embrace radical change. For both of them, the journey had only just begun. Martha stepped back, her heart racing as the sirens wailed in the distance. She felt the weight of uncertainty underpinned by a flutter of possibility. Marco squeezed her hand tighter, his youthful energy contrasting starkly with the tension that threatened to pull her down. "Let's go," he urged, his eyes sparkling with a determination that flickered with hope. She glanced back at the crowd, each individual a thread in the vibrant tapestry that could maybe, just maybe, be mirrored in her own life. In this tumultuous moment, a spark ignited within her. Coiled tightly was the artistic impulse that had long been dormant. She couldn't hide anymore. Perhaps it was indeed time to resurrect the artist she had buried beneath layers of worry and self-doubt. "Okay," she breathed out, the word feeling like a pact between them. "Let's find our voice." They navigated toward the front line, and as they approached, the fervent calls of the crowd began to seep into her soul. The mere act of stepping forward felt like unearthing a long-hidden purpose, a primal calling to create, to express. But as they moved, a nagging thought echoed. Was she truly ready to expose her vulnerabilities through her art? The past lurked in the shadows, a barrier clad in fear and self-judgment, waiting patiently for any sign of fragility. The woman leading the protest faced them directly now, her fervor seeping into Martha's veins. She spoke of empowerment, love, and embracing one's history even in the face of adversity. Each word grabbed Martha's attention with fierce intensity. It resonated, reminding her of the stories crafted through her paintbrush, the colors, the forms, and the whispers of old dreams. But would she have the guts to unleash them into the world again? "We could draw together," Marco suggested, voice barely rising above the cadence of the gathering. "You can paint, and I can write. It would be powerful." His words held a weight that struck deep. Could she truly channel the palpable energy surrounding them into true creativity? Could she build a bridge from her dream-laden past to the vibrant potential of now? The journey ahead felt daunting, but with Marco beside her, it now hummed with vulnerability wrapped in courage. "Yes," she nodded, her pulse quickening anew. "We'll start tonight, just us." They repositioned themselves, threading through the crowd until they found a quieter corner, less engulfed by the clamor, yet alive with the urgent undercurrents of the protest. Martha pulled out a small sketchbook she always carried. With each stroke of her pencil, past desires converged with present intentions, each line a rebellion against the inertia that once confined her. Marco pulled out a notebook of his own, filling the air with soft sounds of pages turning and scratching pencils. As their creative sanctuary unfurled amid the ambient noise, she felt something shift. A seed of empowerment was being watered by their collective energy, let loose by the chaos around them. Yet as the atmosphere filled with the tangible promise of radical change, a subtle whisper of doubt crept back in. What if her art, when shared, would be seized, judged, torn apart? An artist was often equated with vulnerability, and she struggled to reconcile her ambitions with the fear of exposure. "Mom," Marco interrupted her reverie, lifting his head. "Are you all right?" She smiled, albeit weakly, realigning herself to the present. "Just finding my footing, that's all. Wasn't that the essence of creation? Navigating uncertainty while digging deep into one's soul." An unexpected wave of frustration washed over her. Why did she still wade in the mud of self-doubt? Shouldn't creativity be a catalyst for liberation? She was tired of simply observing life instead of living it. "Let's tackle our fears together," she blurted, the words spilling forth as if unearthing her resolve. "I'll face the canvas and all it represents if you promise to share your music." "I promise," Marco grinned, his eyes ablaze with excitement. As they sat in their shared creative space, bound by dreams yet burdened by fears, she sensed an essence of alchemy. Art would be their language, a canvas for both healing and expression. But just as hope surged, the haunting specter of her past nudged at the edges of her mind. Could she truly confront old ghosts? Would her revival, this creative renaissance, survive the flickers of fear dancing on the periphery of her heart? As she traced another line, the sound of approaching footsteps caught her attention. A group of individuals from the protest had chosen to merge their energy into what felt like a tighter circle around them. Were they drawn by curiosity or understanding? Martha held her breath, the weight of the coming moment thick in the air. Here stood a chance to redefine her story. Yet would the immersion into this new journey spur her courage, or would it unravel her determination? The stage was set, but the clarity of her intentions felt like fog. Could she unveil herself without losing everything? With a deep exhale, she prepared for the unexpected intertwining of her personal rebirth with this thriving energy around her, hoping it would guide her to the answers she desperately sought. Yet as the crowd swelled, the tension mounted, revealing shadows of doubt that threatened to shatter her resolve before it even began. What would emerge as the layers peeled back, revealing not just art, but also the hidden truths within her very being? Martha's hand trembled as the sketchbook lay open before her, the blank page a vast ocean of possibilities, tinged with trepidation. The murmur of the crowd around her pulsed like a heartbeat, each voice a rhythmic reminder of the world bustling outside her cocoon. Marco's eager scribbling at her side was the lifeline she clung to, a catalyst encouraging her to plunge into the depths of herself. As the unfamiliar group closed in, curiosity flickered in their eyes, igniting a fire of anxiety in her belly. Could she transform her fear into fuel for creation? The thought was intoxicating, yet terrifying. She sensed a growing energy, a collective anticipation that mirrored her internal chaos. The fear known so intimately began to shift. It donned the costume of possibility. "Hey, what are you working on?"
One of the newcomers queried, a spark igniting in her bright blue gaze. The question seemed simple, yet its weight felt colossal. Martha's heart hammered as she searched for her voice. "Just some sketches," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper, yet the acknowledgement made her pulse quicken. It was affirmation, a slight break in the dam of her self-imposed restrictions. "Can we see?" Another voice chimed in, a melodic invitation laced with earnest enthusiasm. Martha's instinct was to retreat, to shield her vulnerability beneath layers of excuses and retreat into her comfort zone. Yet glancing at Marco, she felt a flicker of resolve deepen. They were all artists in their own right, whether with paint, word, or action. They understood the dichotomy of creation, when art was both an offering and a burden. "Okay," she said, surprise at her own courage unfurling within her chest. As she turned the pages to reveal her sketches, the reactions ranged from curiosity to admiration. They began to discuss the symbols, the themes, and the emotions embedded within each stroke, and for the first time in ages, Martha felt liberated by her art instead of confined by it. But as their words of validation surrounded her, another internal battle ignited. The familiar voice of self-doubt crept back in, taunting her with pictures of harsh critiques and failures replaying like a broken record. What if they didn't really understand? "Are you really ready for this?" she questioned herself, an inner monologue drowned by the fervor in the air. Tension coiled within her, questions hummed louder than before. Could they remain intangible connections to her past, or would they demand something closer to the core than she had ever revealed? The realization crashed over her with surprising clarity. The magic of creation lay not merely in perfection or audience approval, but in authentic expression. Martha blurted, "Art isn't just pretty pictures, it's raw, it's flawed, and it's me." The echoes of her declaration rippled across the small gathering, shifting the dynamic. They nodded, and for the first time she saw understanding radiate back at her. One young woman stepped closer, eyes fierce yet tender. "Exactly. Inspiration comes from truth, and we each bring our unique truths to the canvas, don't we?" The group buzzed with energy, bouncing ideas off one another, and suddenly Martha was swept up in it, a whirlpool of creativity that whispered encouragement in her ear. Could she build on this collective inspiration to empower herself? Amidst the shared creativity, Martha recalled a time when self-criticism had paralyzed her, a brush in her hand, aspirations drowning under the weight of expectation. But tonight, standing within a crowd of strangers and fellow dreamers, the rawness of her truth felt like wings unfurling. The first steps to liberation were unfolding before her. With new vigor, Martha picked up her pencil once more, breathing in the fresh air of possibility. As lines began to form under her hand, defined shapes emerged, indicative of the fears she expected to confront. Yet doubts lingered, gnawing at the edges of her resolve.
Would the upcoming unveiling of her work tear at the threads of connection she had forged with this newfound community? The beauty of this evening threatened to clash with the looming judgment of the outside world. The evolution of her artistry hinged on embracing authenticity. Was she truly prepared for that level of exposure? Through voices rising in encouragement, she felt the electricity that came from sharing oneself fully. Would her art, when displayed, resonate or reveal fractures? Just as she felt the momentum building, a harsh noise shattered the flow. A shout from the edge of the crowd caught everyone's attention. What came next felt like a siren's call, a disturbance pushed against the very foundation of her tentative bravery. What waited in the chaos that followed? Would she hold firm to her creative resolve, or would let the storm overtake her yet again? With blinding clarity, she understood that this moment was only a fragment of her journey. The tempest of her past did not dictate her future. Accepting that truth was her next challenge, one she had to conquer. Martha's heart raced, sensing that she was teetering on the precipice of discovering an even deeper resolve. As the crowd buzzed restlessly, she could only wonder, would she stand tall amidst the roaring chaos, or would the shadows of her past draw her back into their unrelenting grasp? As the shout echoed through the crowd, mingling with the rustling whispers and uncertain laughs that enveloped her, she turned her head in the direction of the noise, her heart thumping steadily in conflict with her pulse, a slow but insistent reminder to remain grounded amidst the chaos that threatened to erupt. In the distance, a figure was pushing through the group, visibly agitated, hands flailing as if trying to breach an invisible barrier. Could this stranger be merely a disruptor, or did he represent a confrontation with the very fears Martha was poised to conquer? Each step he took felt like a jolt to her nervous system. "Excuse me, everyone!" the man shouted, eyes wild with an energy that sent a ripple of unease through the gathering. "What are you all doing here? You should be focusing on real talent, not fixating on this amateur drivel." For a moment, time stood still. Every word sliced through the encouraging environment, leaving Martha exposed under the spotlight she had just begun to embrace. The implications of his challenge hung thick in the air, threatening the fragile sense of empowerment she had begun to cultivate.
Martha's throat tightened, the familiar whispers of inadequacy resurrecting within her. Was he right? Did her art hold any true weight? Questions spiraled in her mind, clawing at the edges of her confidence. But then something shifted. Amidst the swell of self-doubt, an unexpected rush of determination surged within her. She began to understand that the man wasn't just an outsider throwing barbs. He represented the cynical inner critic she fought daily. Could she let his words dictate her worth? The vulnerability she'd just begun to embrace pushed forward, demanding to be recognized. In that tense moment, the whispers around her hardened into a chorus of support. The others in the group, emboldened by Martha's transformation, stepped closer, forming a barrier around her that felt both protective and empowering. They began responding to the intruder, voices resonating with conviction. "Maybe it's not about labels," one member challenged, "but the raw energy that creates art. What's more important, titles or the passion behind each stroke?" Martha's heart surged with gratitude for their solidarity, yet her internal battle raged on. Once again her pencil lay poised over the paper, but the delicacy of her emotions collided violently with the shards of doubt. She could tap into this collective spirit, however the fear of exposure loomed larger than ever. Envisioning her sketches as echoes of her truths, the tones and hues reflecting her experiences and vulnerabilities, Martha began to consciously push back against the noise in her head. This was about honesty, about unveiling layers of herself she often buried under the weight of concern. It was time to stand against the tide of external judgment. "Art is subjective," she finally declared, her voice firm, a proclamation woven with every thread of resilience she possessed. The crowd vibrated in response, applause cascading warmly toward her.
The intruder faltered, momentarily thrown off by the unforeseen support. The energy surged through Martha, allowing the realization to settle that she was enmeshed in a larger narrative, a narrative of acceptance, of navigating critique with grace and strength. She allowed herself to be vulnerable, not just to her fellow artists, but to every aspect of her journey. The sketches she created in the moment became cathartic releases, each line a push against the fear of future failures, each stroke an assertion of her capacity to evolve. The adrenaline surged through her as the intensity of emotion fueled her, transforming doubts into determination. Yet standing resolute also awakened another internal whisper, one urging her to confront the reality of what it meant to share her work beyond this encouraging bubble.
The looming visibility beyond the crowd began to take form. A future exposure to critics outside this cocoon of camaraderie loomed, waiting just around the corner. Her palms began to sweat as the notion crystallized. This was more than merely sharing sketches. It was laying bare her struggles, her truths, and inviting scrutiny. But another thought sparked, igniting a twinkle of courage. Perhaps this was the step she needed, a deliberate leap into all her uncertainties. What awaited her in the embrace of authenticity? Could she wield her art as a sword, cutting through the fog of fear to reveal her true self? The cacophony around her grew quieter in her ears, and she pulled herself deep into her artistic vision. As other voices faded, she leaned into her pencil with renewed vigor. What lay ahead was uncertain, but she felt the horizon beckon. With a final glance towards the intruder, she realized it was time to redefine her narrative on her own terms. Would she seize this opportunity to embrace vulnerability or retreat under the looming specter of fear? The pulse of her journey was about to take a bold turn. As she pushed her pencil across the page, a thrill electrified her spirit. What revelations awaited in this newfound embrace of authenticity? The answer loomed just out of reach, spinning a new web of possibilities. Would her art finally become the escape and expression she yearned for, or would the shadows of judgment reclaim their authority over her? Martha stood there, her heart a whirlwind of emotions, with the chaos of the protests enveloping her, but the community surrounding her creating a warm cocoon of support. The intruder's taunts hung in the air, challenging her self-worth, yet she felt the threads of doubt loosening their grip. With determination pulsing through her veins, she focused on the sketchbook. The once blank pages transformed into a canvas as she poured her heart onto paper, each stroke embodying her journey of rediscovery, of love, loss, and the courage to reclaim who she was meant to be. Marco smiled at her, his presence an anchor that steadied her resolve. Her sketches depicted visions of resilience, vibrant representations of emotions that had been stifled for too long. She painted the turbulent sea of longing that had echoed through her life, along with luminous sunrises that symbolized new beginnings and possibilities. Art isn't confined to the brushed strokes and colors, it's alive in the message we choose to convey, she asserted to the fascinated crowd. Each revelation, each cherished moment of her life resonated with that stirring inside her, as if dare she let her truth emerge unshielded. The responses from the crowd rippled through the air, affirmations echoing her newfound resolve. "That's right, embrace your voice," one woman shouted. Martha's heart soared. The power of unity resonated strongly, weaving a fabric of understanding across the spectrum of the gathered artists.
Nevertheless, conflicting emotions surged within her, whispering fears that perhaps this moment was merely an illusion, a fleeting refuge that threatened to dissolve in the harsh light of scrutiny once she returned home. But deep down she understood that confronting her fears was precisely the decisive step toward authentic self-expression. Stepping forward, she took a breath, the air thick with possibility.
I had hidden away the artist in me for so long, worried about how others would perceive my work, fearful of failure, crippling myself with doubt. The crowd maintained an awe-filled silence, her words drawing them into her story. "I want to change that," she continued, the ink flowing freely as she spoke. "This journey is about uncovering not only my artistry, but also embracing the vulnerability that comes with being my true self. The fear of what lies ahead, of judgment, rejection, may always linger, but I refuse to let those shadows dictate my choices." With those words, she stripped away layers of pretense, revealing her core, the artist who had long fought battles silently, battling the ravages of loneliness, the daunting loss of Edward, and the suffocating expectations of motherhood that had blurred her identity. Her sketches became a mantra, exploring emotions she had buried for too long. The crowd watched in awe, captivated by the rawness of her vulnerability. As she transformed her struggles into art, a gentle laughter and acceptance began to flow through her into the atmosphere around them. Suddenly, a spark illuminated within her. "Let's create together," she said, addressing Marco and the newfound friends around her. "Let's turn our voices and our struggles into art, channeling this energy into our creativity." Eagerly spurred by her enthusiasm, the crowd surged closer, sharing materials and ideas, weaving threads of connection as they collectively crafted a mural, a tapestry depicting their individual experiences and collective dreams. The fear that had once sought to tear them apart no longer held ground. Instead arose an audacious collaboration that transformed uncertainty into a canvas of vibrant stories. With each collaborative stroke, Martha felt her past fears dissolve into the amalgamation of colors on the wall. The shouts of the intruder faded into nothingness, veiled by the unity echoing through the transformative experience they all shared. In that vibrant whirlwind of creation, Martha felt herself emerging anew, not just as an artist, but as a woman who had reclaimed her place within the narrative of her life. She was present, unapologetically real, and beautifully whole. As her fingers brushed against the canvas, the realization washed over her. She was no longer a widow burdened by the weight of her past, but a living testament to resilience, courage, and self-expression. She had created a masterpiece built from joy and sorrow, woven with threads of love both lost and newly found.
At that moment, she embraced the truth that she had long sought, the knowledge that art was not about perfection, it was about authenticity and connection. And as she stood before her mural, surrounded by Marco and those who had embraced her truths, she knew she had unlocked a door to a lifetime of passion, creativity, and profound purpose. "I am ready," she declared to the crowd and herself, "ready to face whatever comes next, not just through my art, but through every aspect of my life." And with that powerful affirmation, Martha stepped forward into the chaos that waited beyond the creative sanctuary, her heart steady and her spirit unyielding. Her journey had reached a new dawn, a revelation that paved the way for everything still to come. Now the moment had arrived to share her story with the world outside. "Imagine what's possible when we embrace our truths fully," she called out, feeling the surge of hope pulsing through every gathered shoulder. The past was no longer a shackle. Instead, it had become the very foundation upon which she stood firm, ready to craft a future colored by her unique voice and vision. Embodying the artist she was always meant to be, Martha ventured onward, ready to create a life worth living, unfettered by fear. If you were inspired by Martha's incredible journey of transformation, don't let this moment slip away.
Subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will ignite your soul. Leave a like now to support the algorithm and keep these powerful messages alive. Comment below and share your reactions, the triumphs, the challenges, and your own stories of overcoming. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this profound conclusion. Your support means the world to us.